and in that we plan to cover the following topics. So the first one is centroid. Number two is Pappus theorems. Number three, moments of inertia. So these are the broad topics that we'll be covering in this chapter. So to start with centroid, uh, I would like to mention that you must be familiar with some other terms. For example, something called a center of mass, and then there is another thing called center of gravity. Okay, so you must be familiar with these terms, right? Center of gravity or center of mass. Uh, so center of gravity. Let us define center of gravity. So, for example, if I have a piece of rock and I plan to uh, let's say attach it with a string and then hang. Okay, so it would align itself in certain way, and if I draw a vertical line, okay, from the point where I'm hanging the object, okay, and let that be marked on that object. Okay, now in the next situation, let me hang the same rock at a different configuration, and from a different point. Okay, now earlier mark, as you can imagine, is still there, and then it again aligns itself in a certain way. Okay, and if I just draw another line which uh, represents its vertical alignment, so I get a different line, and I can continue doing this operation, and all of those lines will possibly intersect at a single point, and that point is called the center of gravity. Center of gravity right here. Okay, now if I want to go for a proper definition, let's say these are the coordinate triangles, coordinate triads, and let's say this is the object. Okay, and actually this has some weight, so I can imagine that if I take a small portion of that, okay, and I'm not explaining what small portion is. It a small volume or a small mass, but let's say whatever that small portion be, it has some small weight dw. Okay, and that dw would be acting vertically downward, right? Okay, now this is a very familiar situation, right? It's a so-called parallel force system. Okay, what I mean by that is uh, mm, What I mean by that is, if uh, that at different locations, okay, I can take this differential weight, and I can have a resultant representation. That means I can equivalently represent that in a way that the entire weight be acting through a single point. Okay, we can do that for a parallel force system. So the total weight be working on a single point, and that point would be center of gravity. Now at this point, if you are uh, you know taking interest, you should be saying that we cannot get a direct point of action. Actually would be getting the the line of action. Okay, so we would not be getting the exact point at which the weight is acting, but we would instead get a line. Yes, so this is similar to this line right here. Okay, where the object aligns itself. Okay, and if you can apply uh, W in the upward direction, if you can apply a tension T in the upward direction, which just negates your W, okay, so the object remains in equilibrium. So these configurations are equilibrium configurations, and they are obtained obtained like that, or for that matter, that line was obtained like that because it contained the center of gravity. Now, again, we can change the configuration and repeat the operation, and eventually we'll get a single point. Okay, so that point is the center of gravity. Now, at any configuration, the center of gravity has this property. If I were to take the position vector of any differential weight, and then no, sorry. If I were to take the position vector of any given differential weight, and then if I perform this integration, okay, and eventually divide that with the total weight, I'll be getting R bar. What is R bar? R bar, as you can see, is the average position vector, or the coordinate of the center of gravity. So so G is essentially that point which gives you the single force resultant for this parallel force system. That means, I mean, that you can take another differential weight at a different location. Okay, and that is also acting vertically downward, and this keeps on going. Okay, so this is a system of parallel forces. Okay, of course, infinite number of them, because these forces are infinitesimal. So essentially, it's a distributed load. Okay, but in the end, you still get a single point through which the resultant force passes. Okay, no moment required. So so the position vector of G is essentially given by this quantity right here. Okay, so in other words, you can say that I'm taking the moment. Okay, but this is not the moment that you have taken using the cross product. Here, taking moment essentially means this thing. So let's say the x coordinate of the centroid. So sorry, not the centroid, the center of gravity. Okay, so G is the center of gravity, and the x coordinate of the center of gravity is to get that, you need to take the moment of the weight with the x coordinate and divide the whole thing with W. Okay, it's not similar to, it's no, it's an extension of the idea of taking the conventional moment. Okay, so in a conventional moment, you would be taking a cross product of the force. Yes, that also works in this case. So basically, what you can do is uh, you can write R bar cross W Okay, this time w is like a vector, but in this expression it's like a scalar. But you can instead choose to do this product right here, and that should, as we discussed earlier, that it is the equivalent force system. Just one second. Okay, so you could also go with this definition where this is simply R cross dW integration with respect to the weight. So you are integrating with respect to the weight. So basically, you are taking this tiny portions of differential weight and taking cross product. Taking cross product with the position vectors, and in the end, you are supposed to get this expression. Okay, and that is actually how we get a single force resultant. Okay, so this is the, if this is the origin, then essentially this is the net moment with respect to the origin, because of the distributed load that is acting on this body. Okay, and if you are able to represent that as a single force resultant, which you can because it's a system of parallel forces, then the position vector of that location, the location of the single force, is given with this expression. Okay, so w is, as you can see, is integration dw. Okay, now we are actually slightly deviating from that definition of moment. Okay, it's not actually your cross product moment. Okay, uh, because because not only are we mapping the x and the y coordinates, we are also mapping the z coordinate in this case. Okay, which we could not be doing with with um, with w being vertically downward. Okay, in this expression, but that we are doing over here. So this definition of moment, okay, is a very special type of definition. It is not the conventional moment that we take of a force. Okay, so in this case, we are by taking moment means we simply take a weighted sum or weighted integration. Okay, so we are basically taking the average. Okay, and for as far as the x and the y coordinates of g are concerned, the ones that you get from this conventional moment definition and from this definition right here are going to be identical. Okay, the z coordinate, there is no question of z coordinate in this case. Okay, if the moment if the weight itself is acting in the negative z direction, uh, but you can imagine in the next instant you could be orienting the object uh, rotated 90 degrees. Okay, and in that case, whatever coordinate, whatever coordinate is currently the z coordinate. Okay, that is no longer the z coordinate, but the w would still be acting vertically downward. Okay, so in with that definition, you can extend this representation even for the z coordinate, and that way you can have the z coordinate of the center of gravity. Okay, and therefore the center of gravity is not anywhere on this vertical line, it's a fixed location. Okay, we are spending a lot of times in defining the center of gravity, but we intend to go over here, centroid. Okay, uh, mm, and we would go over there through this. Okay, but I just want to make sure that whatever has been discussed so far, does that make sense to you, or if you have known things slightly differently. Does this make sense to you? Do you understand that the moment that you are taking is different from the moment of a force that we usually take for for calculation of reaction forces, or getting the equilibrium, or getting an equivalent force system? Is anyone listening?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So do you see the the similarity and the dissimilarity between the two definitions of the moments?
Sir,
Yes.
sir, can you please repeat the dissimilarity? Similarity is there, but the dissimilarity, yes.
Mhm. First of all, when we are trying to get the location of a single force resultant, very similar to what, or rather exactly what we did with equivalent force system for the case of a set of parallel forces. In that case, there is no question of a z coordinate. But here we are extending the definition, because we can. It is simply multiply the coordinate with the differential weight, the scalar value of it, integrate it, and divide that with the weight itself. You understand that the expressions on the second definition, okay, on the ones in the right, all those quantities are scalar quantities. The numerator, the denominator, everything is are scalar quantities. Can you see that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. If we are trying to get an equivalent force system, then we would be getting the x and the y coordinate. You might recall that we would not be getting the z coordinate, because we can take any location on the line of action of the force, and since the resultant force is vertical, so we can take any position vertically, and that would be our g. But but that can also be justified if I think that the object now can be reoriented. Okay, and now the z axis, I mean the earlier z coordinate is not now the z coordinate. Okay, so then we can think of the extension of this method of getting the coordinate, okay, of the centroid, even for the z coordinate.
Okay,
Okay.
sir. Okay, sir.
Okay,
Okay, sir.
so mm, the next thing that we will do is extend the idea of center of mass. Um, so imagine now dw. I shouldn't be erasing this diagram right here. So this dw right here is your g times dm. Okay, so I can call this time I can call it a differential mass, and let's say this is the position vector of the differential mass. Okay, so I can get the so-called cm, or the center of mass, given by r bar, such that x bar is integration x g dm divided by gm, right? Sorry, small m. Okay, so essentially this is the w, gm, and gdm is dw. Okay, and from the numerator and the denominator I can cancel g, so I have this expression for the center of mass. Okay. Now, is it mandatory? Okay, by the way, uh, the integration is happening over the total mass. Okay, what does that mean? I could be taking many more differential masses, getting their coordinates, and integration, as you know, is sum of infinite number of terms. So I'll be getting infinite number of such infinitesimally small differential masses, and for each of them I'll get the corresponding coordinate, multiply with the differential mass, and add them up, and in the end I'll be dividing with the total mass. Aim, of course, is integration dm over m. Now, at this point, we are, allowed to have a couple of confusions. First of all, that first confusion is that the center of mass is the center of gravity. Number one, and secondly, the center of mass, the definition of the center of mass, is only valid in presence of, in a gravitational field. The truth is, the definition of center of mass is valid even in the absence of a gravitational field. So this example that we chose only gives us a center of mass that is coincidental with the center of gravity. So only for this example, center of mass is center of gravity. Okay, there are situations in which center of gravity would not exist. Point being, imagine you are the object is traveling in space, okay, and the gravitational pull from any of the bodies isn't significant near to the object. So there is no significant gravitational pull on the object. So in that case, the very term center of gravity is meaningless. If the gravitational field is absent or negligible, then there is no such thing as a center of gravity. But if you follow this definition, there is something called a center of mass. Okay, and center of mass has to make sense on its own. Okay, even without the gravity. Okay, and actually the center of mass has many more applications. Okay, even when there is no gravitational field. For example, the net force that you apply is not mass times acceleration. Okay, for an object. Okay, unlike what you believe would be Newton's second law, but Newton's second law is based on particles. That is, the objects without any significant dimensions. But when you do a realistic model of the real life object, when you want to model like an asteroid or a planet have as a body with dimensions, maybe even a rigid body. So in that case, you cannot neglect the fact that the acceleration is not same everywhere. Okay, so if this object is rotating, the acceleration over here is slightly on this side, and over here it could be slightly on this side. And because it is rotating, it could also be developing centripetal acceleration. Okay, so the acceleration need not be same everywhere, and therefore this definition also, even when we are talking about bodies with finite dimension, it is valid, but it is true when you are taking the acceleration of the center of mass. Please note, in that situation, there need not be a gravitational field. So there need not be a so-called center of gravity. But the definition of center of mass is important because that time the net force that is acting on the body is responsible for the acceleration, or it is proportional to the acceleration of the center of mass. Okay, so the all I'm trying to say here is that center of mass has its important standalone importance. Okay, so does this make sense to you? Okay, now we would introduce something called a centroid. Now, centroid is different from a center of mass and a center of gravity. And a lot of you, while appearing for a class test or semester exam, okay, will confuse centroid with center of mass and center of gravity. And there are certain proofs, certain derivations that we give for centroid. Okay, you would be trying to do that for the center of mass and center of gravity, and in the end, you would casually declare that the centroid is the center of mass. Okay, so uh, today is the time when you need to understand the difference between each of these three. Okay, and the bottom line is when you confuse the three, okay, that doesn't give you very good grades. Okay, and basically the point is it is incorrect. That approach is incorrect. Okay, so now let us move on to the centroid, and we'll simply call it C. And this time, assume that this body is homogeneous. Okay, it doesn't have to be, but if you do assume homogeneous, then you get to relate between the two. So in that case, dm becomes the density, which is same everywhere, times dv. Density need not be constant everywhere. The material need not be homogeneous. Okay, but if you do assume that, then dm and dv becomes proportional. Okay, so in that case, this dm right here can be written as rho dv, and this m right here can be written as rho times v. So in the end, we have the following expression for x bar, which is 1 by v rho dv. Sorry, not rho dv. xv x dv, y bar as 1 by v integration y dv, and z bar is 1 by v integration z dv, all taking place, the integration is taking place over the volume. So you take a differential volume element, and you take infinite number of them, so many of them that is required to cover the entire volume. Okay, and you repeat the process that you did for the center of gravity and center of mass. Now, centroid is not just defined for a volume; it is also defined for a surface. Okay, for example, if you have a surface like this, I'm just trying to tell you that it's not a planar surface. And if you take a differential area, that has the following coordinates x, y, and z. So for that, you can define the centroid. Okay, and the centroid might lie outside of the area, and that is true even for the volume. For example, the centroid for a toroidal body like that of a tube of your tire. Okay, so the centroid is probably at the center of the the circle. Okay, and that lies outside of the geometry, and that is quite possible. Okay, and same thing applies to the surface as well. So can you write down the expression for the coordinates of the centroid of the area? And can you also write down so let's say this is a line right here whose length is L. You take a differential length dl and its coordinates are these. Okay. So can you write down the expression for the centroid of the line? Can you tell me the expressions for the area and the line?
Sir, should it be the line integral divided by the total length
Yes, it is a line integral. Uh,
from the starting to ending point?
yes. So you can mark the two ends as 1 and 2. So you can integrate between 1 and 2. So just write down the expressions for the centroidal coordinates for the area and the line, the surface and the line. Okay, so I forgot to mention one other, thing regarding the center of gravity. Now, we are considering objects which are very tiny and very close to the surface of Earth, and therefore we have a parallel force system. But we also discussed that if the object is large enough, okay, and then compared to Earth, if it is even further than the surface of Earth, so in that case we can think of mm, that the distributed load are not parallel set of forces. They are essentially uh, acting through they are actually converging to the center of that is Earth's center. Okay, so in that case also our that definition, earlier definition of center of gravity is not valid. The point also lies, that means a single object, okay, whether it's in a certain gravitational field or if it is outside of the gravitational field, the center of gravity will change. It may exist, may not exist, and it may also change. Okay, uh, such is not true with the center of mass. The center of mass is more fundamental, as we discussed, and that is going to remain same irrespective of its position, as long as the the structure is I mean the integrity of the structure is maintained, it is going to remain the same. Okay, and here we are discussing about the centroid. Okay, so these are the expressions for the centroids of the surface, and then next comes the expression for the center of the centroid of the line. Now we could right away go to Papa's theorem, uh, but before going there, maybe we can discuss a few things, or try to solve a couple of problems.
Sir,
Yes.
for the toroid one,
Mhm.
is that expression something like 2 into r square, capital R square minus small r square, means if we consider the bigger one as capital and the smaller one as small r, then
No, 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 no. Sorry. Let me tell you this. First of all, you understand what is a toroidal shape? It's basically a donut.
a tube.
It's a tube. It's a donut. Okay. So I mean, it's not as if the area enclosed is pi r squared or something. Okay, pi ri squared, rho squared minus pi ri squared, outer radius, inner radius. It's not like that. Okay, I'm not sure about the expression, but it is possibly a little more complicated than that. Okay, so actually by the end of today's class, we should be in a position to identify the surface area of the toroidal shape. Not sure about the the centroid, but the surface area we will definitely be able to
Sir,
look into. Yes,
sir, does a toroid have the cross section of a toroid? Does it have to be a circle? Can it be like a square?
it can. I mean, I don't know whether if the cross section of a cylinder is a square, would it still be called a cylinder?
No,
There
but
is a name for that. It is called a prism. I'm not sure if there is such name for toroidal shape. Okay.
oh, okay.
Mm, but what you can still call it, even if it is like a rectangle, you can still call it toroidal shape. Okay, from the topological perspective. Okay, so topologically that circle is equivalent to the square. Okay,
Yes, that's why I was like, because it's a ring shape, basically like a donut. It still retains the shape, just the cross section is not a circle.
I understand. I'm not sure what we are going to call it. Acha, let's focus on this problem right here. Okay. By the way, can you see this image? I don't know how to enlarge this one. Okay. Can you see this one? Can you see this
Yes, sir. Yes.
portion of a circle? Okay. And you are being asked to find out the centroid. find out the centroid. Now, in this case, of course, the centroid of the shaded area. Okay, that's how the question is given. You see, of course, the z coordinate doesn't make sense in this case, because let's say the entire geometry, entire shape is on the xy plane. So the centroid of the z coordinate of the centroid is essentially 0. Okay. Now, how do we get the centroid for this circular section? You see, from the very symmetry of the problem, one can guess that the x coordinate is 0. Okay, from the very symmetry of the geometry. But for the time being, let's not go into the details of the symmetry. But what about the y coordinate? How do you get that? So of course, we will have to perform the integration in polar coordinate system. And to do that, okay, this is not the brightest color. This is what I am doing. Okay. So this right here is the angle theta. Okay, so theta ranges between so theta is greater than 30 degrees and less than 150 degrees. Okay, and since we'll have to be doing the integration in radians, so let's say pi by 6 and 5 pi by 6. Okay. So theta ranges between these two angles, and this of course is our d theta. So this angle is d theta. Okay, and we'll also draw certain. Okay. So we also need to cover the radial portion of it. So this is how it works. So let's say this much is R and this much is dr. Okay. So R ranges between 0 to 200 mm. Okay. So this is our differential area. Okay. If any of you have done integration in polar CS, you should know what this area component is. So this is our differential area, dA. So this differential area, in one side its length, its dimension is dr. On the other side, it is r times d theta. Or in other words, r dr d theta. Why are we using polar coordinate system? And a lot of you would, because you consider yourself really smart, which is true, but so what you try to do is, try to use a Cartesian coordinate system. Okay, and that would involve taking square root of 200 squared minus x squared and whatnot. And yes, I know some of you are smart enough to, perform the integration. Some of you do recall what sort of, integrated quantity this becomes. But I would suggest taking the polar coordinate system whenever you have anything looking circular. Okay. The advantage being that in polar coordinate system, this is not a circular component. This is actually a rectangle. So this is the r theta coordinate system. So this is 30. This sorry. No. So I made a mistake. So in r theta coordinate system, this is what it looks like. This geometry is something like this. So this much is 200. And this of course is 0. Up to this is 30. or let's say this point is pi by 6 and this point is 5 pi by 6. Okay. What is the advantage of having a rectangular area? So you are integrating something in this rectangular region. Okay. You are not getting the area of this rectangle. You are integrating something in that rectangular region. What are you integrating? Let's say I'm looking for the x coordinate. So x is r cos theta. Okay. So all I have to do is integrate x times dA, and in the end I'll have to divide that by a. Now I can get the total area very easily. Okay, the total area is first of all integration dA, which basically is integration r dr d theta. Okay. So this calls for double integration, and whatever differential quantity you write first, that integration is happening first. That is the inner integration. So you need to put the limits on r. So that goes from 0 to 200, and the theta goes from 0 to not 0 to, it is from pi by 6 to 3 pi by 6. Okay. And whenever the limits on integration are independent, okay, you see all are just numbers. So the limits on r are not dependent on theta. And similarly, because theta, so if even if theta were the inner integration, okay, of always the limits on inner integration is a function in general of the outer integration. So quantity on which you are doing the outer integration. Okay, that is the general rule. But in this,
upper limit 5 pi by 6.
5 pi by 6. Okay. So my point is that in general, when the the area on which you are integrating is not a rectangle. Okay. You see, this is also not a rectangle, but in r theta coordinate system, it's a rectangle. So whenever you are integrating in a geometry which is not rectangle, the limits of the inner integration is expected to be functions of the quantity with respect to which you are performing the outer integration, okay, or the independent variable of the outer integration. It is supposed to be the function. Okay. But if it is a rectangular area, then these limits are also numbers, which basically means I can change the order of integration. So I can do this. R d theta dr. Okay. And I can also do this. Because the limits are independent, I can simply perform this. I can segregate the integrations. Okay, you can try all of this, gives you the same result. Just remember one thing, the inner integration needs to be done first. Okay, so in each case, you are going to get the same result. Acha, by the way, if you do this integration r d theta, okay, when you are integrating with respect to theta, you are supposed to take r to be a constant. Okay, so you can actually bring r over here, which essentially would give you this result right here. Okay, so in each case, in the end, you are going to get, let's say, 5 pi by 12 times 200 squared. This much millimeter squared is going to be the area of that portion. Okay. So there are a couple of things that needs to be mentioned. First of all, why are we doing this chapter? The truth is, in this particular course, you have very little application of properties of surface. Okay. But if you are working with deformable bodies such as beams and columns, and I hope you understand what are beams and columns, uh, okay, or any other deformable body, then the load bearing capacity of the geometry, okay, so a beam is like a horizontal member that carries vertical load, okay, a column is like a vertical member which carries vertical load. So for a beam, the load is lateral. For a column, the load is axial. Okay, and in either case, quantities such as the centroid, the area, and we also talked about moment of inertia. All of those become important in relation to the load bearing capacity of the geometry. Okay, and where does this find an application? This finds an application everywhere. Okay, every time you are dealing with shapes, every time you are dealing with structural components that are carrying loads, okay, so to understand how much load that they can bear, or how much should they what should be the shape of the cross section for a given set of load, you need to have the understanding of this particular subject right here, properties of surface. And the next part is then where does it make sense, or where is it relevant for you studying electronics engineering? If you are pursuing mechatronics or robotics, where you work with components, okay, structural components that are supposed to perform certain tasks. So every task is associated with certain amount of load, and to design a particular component which will be used for a certain task, you need to have the understanding of its load bearing capacity, or how does it change with the shape of the cross section. And whenever you look into the cross section of a given geometry, all you get to see is its centroid, area, moment of inertia, etc. So yes, however brief, but this does find some application. So that's why you are studying this course right here. So so in the end, this is the this is the integration. Uh, so let's try to do that for the x coordinate. So for x coordinate, this is what the expression should be. You have already calculated the area. Okay, so this is the area. So you can use that, and for calculating the integration x dA, you can perform this. So your theta ranges from pi by 6 to 5 pi by 6. Your r ranges from 0 to 200. X is r cos theta. Then you have r dr d theta. Dr comes first because you see the r integration is the inner integration. That integration has to be done first. Okay, so you can segregate this integration into again two parts because the limits are independent. So one is cos theta d theta with all the theta terms, and then all the r terms. Okay, so try to get the x coordinate. So basically independently perform these integrations and multiply them. So try to get the x coordinate.
Sir, x coordinate would be 0 and y coordinate would be, I am getting 200 root 3 by pi.
Yes, sir. I am also getting this.
Okay, so x coordinate should be 0. That actually is owing to the very symmetry of the geometry, and getting that to be 0 is actually going to tell you that you are following the correct path. What about the y coordinate? How much are you getting?
200 root 3 by pi.
200 root 3 by pi. Okay, Possible, quite possible. So root 3 by pi is around 0.6 or something, 0.55.
It's coming to be total around 110.27.
Yeah, 110.7. Okay, so okay, so so you can now, I would say for this particular chapter, you need to practice a lot of problems, a lot of them. Okay, I mean, even for the chapters on equilibrium and equivalent force system, having the concept was to some extent sufficient. Here, only practice, because each problem is different from the other, so only the practice can save you. Okay, so with that, we'll go for the next problem.
Sir,
Yes.
so one thing, sir, in case of the toroid one,
Mhm.
that area would be the surface area of that position, or what will I say, means surface area or the projection of the toroid in a 2D plane, that area.
No, I never talked about the projection. Okay. I was talking about, let's say, think of the air that is trapped inside that tube. Okay.
Yes, sir.
And, that would be a volume, right? So
Yes, yes.
I was giving an example of having the centroid of that volume that is trapped inside, and you can also think of the surface of that rubber tube. Okay, the centroid of that rubber tube surface. Okay, so that would also be an interesting investigation. So what I'm trying to say here, in none of these examples, I mean, from the very symmetry of the problem, you can literally guess that the center should be at the center of those two circles, right?
Yes, yes.
So basically, all I'm trying to say here is the centroid can very often lie outside of the geometry. Okay, just keep that much in mind.
Okay, sir.
Okay, acha.
Means, sir, I'm still interpreting.
Yeah, yeah.
Means if the what will I say, the air inside that toroid, if
Hmm.
the composition of the air had varying density,
Hmm.
in the case of, means with respect to the z-axis, means along the z-axis it had the varying air density, then
Hmm.
the centroid would have some positive or negative z value, right?
Hmm.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Okay. So this is what I think I should have chosen as the first example. So this is the most general situation. Okay, and at this point, I want to make sure something. I want to mention something. Uh, Always take square like dA. Avoid strip like dA. Okay, I'll explain what I mean by this. So the question is simple. Get the centroid for me. So there is some centroid C over here, and that has coordinates x bar and y bar, and you are essentially supposed to get that centroid. So determine how much is x bar and how much is y bar. Okay, so for that, this is what we are going to do. So imagine you are, while integrating, you are at certain x and certain y. There you took a differential leap, which is dy, and a differential leap over here, which is dx. Then you have this differential area element dy dx. So this dA right here is dx dy. Okay. And in the earlier example, dA was r d theta dr. Okay. All of these are square-like differential area. Okay. That is not a standard terminology. That is what I am using to classify the type of area element that you are supposed to take. Okay. That actually minimizes the chances of getting error or making a mistake in your while trying to solve the problem. Okay, so take a differential area like this. Okay, now let's say, to start with, let me evaluate the area. So that would be integration dA over the area, and I can also call it integration dy dx or dx dy, whatever you may want to choose. Okay, so when you write it like this, it is important to put the limits on integration. Now whatever is your outer integration, okay, so the outer integration is with respect to x, so we need to put the limits on x first. So that is 0 and 2. And this area, okay, so we are performing the integration in xy coordinate system. So this area that is trapped, it is by no means a rectangle. So by now I think you should have figured out that this is the limits on integration of y, which is the inner integration, are not going to be constants. Okay, so all we have to do is to represent the two curves. Okay, so you see the y for a given x, y ranges from this value right here. Let's call it y1. Actually this entire curve is y1 to this value right here, or y2. If I call it y2 of x, that represents the entire curve, and this is y1 of x. Now how much is y1 of x? Y1 of x, for that you need to look into this equation. It is x cubed by 4. And what about y2? Y2 of x is given as x equals y square divided by 2. So y2 of x is square root of twice x. Okay, so the lower value is y1, the upper value is y2, and both the curves needs to be represented like this, that is y as a function of x. Now you can also choose to do the reverse. That means you can represent it like dx dy, and then the limits on y applies to the outer integration. So the limits are essentially 0 and 2 once again, but the limits on x are functions of y. So on the first type of integration, okay, integrating dy dx, so in that the limits are y1 is x cubed divided by 4, the other one is square root of 2x. Okay, here the limits, so when you are doing it with respect to x first, when you are integrating with respect to x first, so the limits on x applies first, and those limits are going to be functions of y, because y is at the outer integration. Okay, so these are your x1 and x2. This time you are representing these two curves. So for any given y, the x value changes from this curve right here to this curve right here. Okay, so this x1 is a function of y, and this x2 is a function of y. So this x1 of y, is y squared by 2, and this x2 of y is cube root of 4y. Okay. So you can do this y squared by 2 to cube root of 4y. Okay. So I need you to try to do integration using both technique and check whether you get the same answer. Okay, so try to evaluate the area using both the techniques. Okay, at this point, I would like to say a couple of things. The first thing is I want to take the first class test this Sunday. Okay, so I'll be sharing the question paper in the classroom.
Sir.
And yes,
Sir, sorry to interrupt, but won't be possible, sir.
why?
This month
Sir,
we are having
we have
hold.
class test settled in throughout this month. Means today is the 12th, 14th we have a class test, 17th we have a class test, 19th, then 22nd, 20th, 21st, sorry, not 19th, then 21st, then 23rd, and then in the last week. So 1 minute, sir. I'm telling, sir.
So then in the 28th
Yes, sir,
and
28th.
30.
Yes, 28 and 30. Up till that we have a class test, and somehow means we are thinking that on the 2nd of August we have a workshop Viva.
Okay, okay. My statement is that you need to have the class test of this subject as well, right? So I'm not sure if only one class test is required or not. I'm not sure about that, and for that I'll have to take 2 class tests. Okay. So the first class test, let me tell you that the syllabus of the first class test would be equilibrium. Up to equilibrium, there is friction. So whatever we discussed up to last week, that is going to be your syllabus. Okay, so I know you have class test on every alternate day. So I still have to take the class test on some day. Okay, so so can you tell me, from next 1 week? So that is today is 12th. So from 12th to 19th. Okay, and at most by 20th. Okay, can you provide me with a date on which I can take a class test?
Sir, can you take the class test on the 26th? Then it will be fine, because we have a class test on 24th and then on 28th. Then we have a date on the 26th.
But if I take the first class test on 26th, then I'll not be able to take the second class test, right?
Sir, all the subjects are all the teachers are taking one class test only because of the time crunch.
Yes,
I
sir.
understand. I understand. I don't know how they are going to manage, but I don't have any instruction that I'm supposed to take only one class test. Okay, and I also think that equilibrium has been covered, up to last week. Okay, and if we do a delay of of over a week, more than over a week, the chances are, some of you would forget what you studied in equilibrium. And I'm not saying that you'll not be able to solve those problems, but the way I have seen some of you solve with those assignments, chances, some of you would go back to solving problems like that, and that would not be that is not what is expected. I mean, free body diagrams are not properly drawn. So many mistakes, so many reaction forces are not shown. So such mistakes would be there. So that's why I was hoping that I can take one class test within next 1 week. So when is 26th? You are saying 26th, so that would be 14 days from now. 2 weeks. You need 2 weeks to, for one class test. How many subjects do you have? How many theoretical subjects do you have?
Sir, every part, sir, is taking one class test. Means maths we have 2 to 3%. Each part it's divided. So we have two
Okay.
class tests.
Means according to teacher, it's
Sir, we have one
Yes,
test
sir.
on
Suppose in
then on
chemistry, then
7
we
days.
have organic, inorganic, and physical separate class test, and in mathematics also. So that's why it is being little
Okay.
complicated.
Okay. And again, let me tell you this. You are talking about each of your class teachers taking one class test. I understand why they are taking one class test each. Because you see, they are only covering 30 to 50% of a given course. So obviously it is justified taking one class test. Okay. Um, so one thing I can do, if it is too much, then we can get rid of friction, and the syllabus for the class test, first class test, should be only up to frames. Is that okay? Can you have a class test then? So whatever we discussed in the last week is not included. Then can we have a
Sir,
class test?
sir, actually the problem is we don't have problem with the syllabus actually,
Okay.
because we have practiced, and the problem is with the date only, because there are lots of subjects, and there are class test is being scheduled already.
You
So
see, for
it's almost like every alternate day there is a class test. That's
Yes,
and
sir.
for
Yes,
that
sir.
continues for 20 days almost. Right?
okay, but if that is the case, then if you have practiced enough, okay, and you see, if it were a physical class test, that is, if you are actually appearing in the class test in a class, then you would probably having 1 hour for the class test. So of all those alternate days of class test, can you not have 1 hour of time for the class test? I mean, the class test question would not be lengthy. It is going to be probably a couple of questions, or maybe 3 questions. For it's not going to be like that assignment that I gave
and
you.
the marks will be 15 or 30.
I think the marks should be 30, right? For class test,
Oh.
we take on 30 marks, right? So
Sir, if there are two class tests, so how will that contribute to our final grade?
see, this is how it typically happens. We take 30 marks class test twice, and then the average is sent to as your class test mark. Okay, so while I'll be filling up your marks, there will be 2 columns for class test 1 and class test 2. So I don't do the average. Okay, so I'll be inserting the class test 1 marks and class test 2 mark, and that would be eventually averaged.
Sir, so the average of the two class test marks will be the final contribution.
Yes. Okay, what you can do is you can think about it and let me know by tomorrow. Okay, so let's get back to what we are discussing. Could you get the area by any method?
Sir, I am getting 5/3.
Sir, 5/3.
5 by 3. Which method do you use? dy dx or dx dy?
Sir,
The
divide.
dy dx.
dy dx. Try dx dy. You see, this is something new. I'm sure you must have heard about double integrations, and you must have heard about many of this thing that I have just said about double or triple integration, the independent limits, and dependent limits, and so on. But it still requires a lot of practice, and only by practicing, okay, that you can have the grasp of how you need to do the integration. So if you do dx dy, are you still getting the same answer?
Sir, I was sorry to interrupt, but the time will be of 2 hours, right?
No, because what I have heard so far, I don't think I'll be able to. No, I'll be giving you the question paper, and you'll have 24 hours to return them to you. Okay,
Acha, means
but
classroom. To classroom.
in the classroom. So, so the thing is, you can the question should be like a class test question. So that is not supposed to take more than 1 hour, because you see, this is repeatedly been discussed in student teacher meetings of our department and many, that students, some of the students have hard time accessing the internet. So I'll be giving 24 hours. So that's not an issue.
Sir, 5/3 only we are getting.
So you are getting 5/3, right?
Yes, sir.
So with both methods. Okay. Acha.
Yes.
Now let's say if I want to get x bar times a, that by definition is integration over a x dA. Okay. And let's say if I choose this one right here. Okay, x dy dx, again the limits on x and y would simply be what we took earlier. Okay, can you tell me whether doing this would be advantageous or doing this is more advantageous? Or both are same?
Sir, if we keep the process consistent, means if we apply that dy dx for both x and y, then it will be like, for x it will be easier and for y it will be difficult, and for y it means if we take the other thing, means for dx dy, then it will be easier for y and difficult for x.
You see, the way I look at it, I think in this case probably both of them would be very, very close to. I mean, of course, the answers will be exactly same, but effort-wise, both would be not very different from one another. But there are situations where they might be. I prefer to write the integration in such a way that your integrand, okay, is constant in the first integration. You understand what I'm saying? So I prefer this way. So in your first integration, it is like a constant. So it's like what happens in the outer integration, wo dekha jayega. But in the first integration, let that be a constant. That is how I prefer. Okay, but you can decide for your own. Okay, so for example, if I have to do integration, if I have to do y bar a, I would be doing this 0 to 2 integration dx dy, y dx dy, so that in the first integration, y is a constant, and that when we do the integration with respect to y is when we take into account rest of the things. Okay, so okay, so you can choose whatever method suits you. Acha, what did I mean by not doing the strip like area element? Okay, taking strip like area element, I mean, this is also, so one can take, let's say, this strip right here, and call this the differential area. So the differential area this time would be dx times y2 minus y1. And how do you integrate a? Of course, it is going to be limits on x, which are 0 to 2, y2 minus y1 dx. Okay. Yes, you would still get the same answer. But then when you have to do x bar a, this is how it is supposed to be done. So in this case, across the element, x is a constant. Okay, so you can take a single x for this one, for this entire element, area element. So this is fine. X dA is also fine. But when it comes to y bar a, so then sorry, not dA, but dx. So this is what people do. They take, because you see this element right here, this strip-like element right here is a rectangle, and it's a no-brainer that for rectangle the centroid is at if this is P and this is H, so it is at and if this is the origin, so this is at B by 2, H by 2, the centroid. Okay, so this is what people do. So because it's like a rectangle, you can take it in the middle. So they multiply with half y1 plus y by y2. Okay, I've seen people do that. Okay, and at first, I've been taking this course for more than 7 years. So initially, first few semesters, I was surprised where did that expression they got from. Okay, so I realized that that is what was the idea behind this. But you see, the thing is, you have to be careful with what coefficient do you put over here. Later on, we would be going for moment of inertia. Okay, so there, instead of taking integration x dA or y dA, we would be doing x squared dA, integration x squared dA. Okay, then this is not going to be half. This is going to be something else, possibly 1/3. Okay, so it's not your job to always remember what coefficient must you put. Okay, so while you are trying to find out the centroid of a given area, you are also using the idea of where the centroid of the rectangle lies. Okay, similarly, when you would be doing moment of inertia, that integration x squared dA, or for that matter, in this case, let's say y squared dA. Okay, if so, there is the moment of inertia about x-axis is defined as y squared dA. So for this entire area, okay, you need to now figure out whether it is 2/3 y squared dA or 1/3 y squared dA or whatever. Okay, that is y2 minus y1 dA or whatever. So that you need to figure out. Okay, so you are not supposed to do that, all that figuring out. Okay, that would be automatically taken care of. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say here. That if I'm doing, let's say, integration y squared dA on this area, okay, so basically, let's say I'm not, so writing something like this would mean that I have mentally done this integration right here. Okay, so for example, here we were taking the area, right? So dy dx. So the y2 minus y1 comes from there. Okay, so integration dy. Okay, so when you are doing y dy, so that becomes actually half of y2 squared minus y1 squared. So that becomes half of y2 plus y1, y2 minus y1. Okay. Now if I do y squared, okay, so it is 1/3 y2 cube minus y1 cube. Okay. So unless you try to remember that and you try to remember where that is coming from, so basically essentially what you are doing is you are mentally doing this integration. Okay. And that's when actually you are doing the correct integration. A lot of the time people forget what to do. Okay. And even with moment of inertia, I've seen some of you taking half of half of y2 plus y1, because that is the average distance whole square. Okay. So those are incorrect. Okay. So you need to understand that all of these expressions are coming from by performing the inner integration. So always take that square shaped differential element and perform that inner integration. Don't be afraid of double integration. It's not that difficult once you practice. Okay. And actually whatever correct expression, okay, I'm putting the word correct, you cannot see it, but I'm putting that in quotes. So whatever correct expression that you are supposed to take, that only comes from inner integration. Okay. So instead of intuitively figuring out that correct expression, do the inner integration and do take the square shaped differential element. Okay. I'm sure you can figure out what are x bar and y bar, because you already figured out how much is the area. So with that, we would move on to the next problem. Achha, one more thing. In the for last year, okay, there is 2019 and 20 session. I had taken some the classes like this one, okay, Google Meet classes probably. So those are also uploaded in that YouTube channel. Okay. And I would those are actually slightly different from the classes that are being taken. Those are mostly like tutorial classes where I'm trying to solve certain problems and all. So I would suggest you to go through that. Okay. And I'm hoping to cover sufficient number of problems, but I'm not sure whether I'll be able to. Achha. So let's take next example. Okay, so this one is in symbolic format, and you are again being asked to find out the centroid. Of course, the symmetry would tell you that the x coordinate of the centroid is going to be 0. So you are only being asked to find out the y coordinate of the centroid. Okay, just like the that circular section. Okay, here also for the shaded area, you can imagine it's going to be the same. So that is the x coordinate of the centroid is 0. Okay. So I just told you to take a square shaped differential area element. Okay. I'm going to just make an exception. I'm just going to take a calculated risk for this one, where I'm defining b as a function of y. Okay, so b is essentially the width of this trapezoid anywhere along its height. Okay, so so when y is a, this you see these angles are 60 degrees, so this angle is also 60 degrees. So this is also b, right? Sorry, this is also a, right? So this side, this length, and same applies over here. So b of y is essentially y. Okay, so and y ranges from a to h. Okay, so let's say if I'm interested in finding out the area, so that is integration dA, and this much is dy, let's say. So dA is essentially b times dy where b is y and y ranges from a to h. So that basically gives you half of h squared minus a squared. So that is half of h plus a, h minus a. So h minus a is the height of the trapezoid, and half of h plus a is the average of the two parallel sides. So this is the average of the two parallel sides, and this is the height. Okay. So you must recall that this is the most familiar expression for the area of a trapezoid. So average side length and the height. Okay, average side length of the parallel sides. So the area can be very easily calculated, and in the same way you can also calculate y bar a, which is integration y dA over a, and a to h by dy, and you can go on. Okay, so whatever expression that you get, divide that with a and you will have your y bar. Okay, so I just told you to not take the strip like area element, but here I know that I'm not going to be wrong, because you see I'm just trying to calculate the y bar, and across this entire strip the y coordinate is a constant, and x bar is, as we discussed earlier, is going to be 0 because of the symmetry of the problem. Okay, so you can also look into this problem. Achha, our next example is this one right here. So for the shaded area, determine the centroid. Let's say the centroid is somewhere over here. Okay, so figure out how much is x bar and y bar. Okay, the process is the same. So at any given x, take the dx differential element, and at any given y, take the differential y element. Okay, so the area actually for this one, the area under the curve is very easily you can figure out. So that is actually you are actually integrating a sinusoidal curve, so you can very easily do that between, let's say, somewhat like 0 to pi by 2 you are integrating, so you can figure out the area. Okay, but just check whether it is the same area that you get out of this double integration. So let's try dy dx, and actually y ranges from, so y ranges from 0 on x-axis to whatever expression that you have, sine pi x by 2a, and then x ranges from 0 to a. Okay, so so I think you can do this integration and get the area, and just check whether you are getting something like b times twice a by pi, because
Yes, sir.
once you integrate, integrate sine of x between 0 to pi by 2, sine of x between 0 to pi by 2, you were supposed to get 1, right? So it is minus cos x minus cos pi by 2, that is minus 0 minus minus plus 1. So it is supposed to be 1 area under the curve. And because it is not sine of x, it is sine of pi by twice a times x. So b twice pi a twice a by pi. Okay. And you know, this amplitude b would also be multiplied. So that's how I figured out that this is what the area is going to be. So in the similar way, you can figure out the x and the y coordinate. Okay. For example, if I'm asked to find out the x coordinate, I can simply write x over here. So x bar dA is integration x dA. So I can write x over here. And in the first integration, it remains a constant. Okay. But if I am required to find out y bar, then I need to perform y dA, and should I use y over here, or should I change the the order of integration? Because in that case, if I change the order of integration, x would be ranging from twice a by pi sine inverse y by b to a value of a over here. So this is how the x is going to range. Okay, and I don't think integrating sine inverse quantity would be very easy. So what I would suggest is, don't change the order of integration, just leave it like this and perform the integration. It would probably have y squared in it, but let that be like that. So I said couple of things. Don't take a square-like element, don't take strip-like element. Then I took a strip-like element. Then I said that conveniently change the order of integration for the x and the y coordinates of the centroid. Then we just came across this example where not changing the order of integration would be the smarter thing to do. Okay. So again, I'm sure you would be able to do this problem. Okay. So these are the different examples that I'm showing. Definitely solve these problems. Okay. And actually solve more problems, even more problems, as many required for you to be, confident with the integration, double integration. Okay. Acha. So the next thing that we would cover is called the composite geometry. So imagine there is a rectangle, but on top of that there is a semicircle, and you are being asked to find out the centroid. So in that case, of course, you can figure out the total area. Total area is a sum of both the areas. So if this is 2r, then you know this is pi r squared by 2, and this much is your this height is required, right? So let's call this a. So this area is going to be twice ar, okay, for this one. So you can figure out the area. Now when you are trying to find out x bar times a, so you are doing this, integrating x dA. Now you can classify the two areas as this one as a1 and this one as a2. These are not their areas, these are their labels. Okay, so you are performing this integration over a1 plus a2. They are like two different sets. So you are performing this integration over the set a1 plus a2, and that actually is the sum of the integration performed over the individual sets. Okay. Now for the rectangle, it is pretty easy, right? So it is going to be, acha, why am I doing X? Because you see, again, this geometry is symmetric. Let's try Y. So Y, Y, and Y. So for the rectangle, the Y is going to be A by 2. And as we discussed, the area is going to be twice AR. Okay. And for the circle, okay, you can figure out what the centroid of that circle could be. You can figure that out. Let's say that is Y2 bar. Okay. So it is actually Y bar 2 and then A2. So in the end, you have the following expression: Y bar A equals summation over I, Y bar I, AI. Okay, because here also it is Y1 bar and this is A1. Okay. Okay, so I again contradicted myself. So these are not just labels, these are also their areas. So, so all I'm trying to say here is when you have composite geometries, you can simply, you know, do this summation. So you can take individual components and find out the centroid and multiply with the area, add them up, then divide with the total area. Then that should give you the Y bar of the entire composite geometry. So one more thing, you might figure out how much is this Y bar when the center of this semicircle lies at the origin. Okay, and once you figured that out, the centroid when the semicircle is sitting on top of this rectangle, okay, so that Y bar, let's call it Y bar prime. So Y2 bar, actually this Y bar prime plus A. So basically for this semicircle, the origin is at a height of A. Okay. So you can now, use the technique that we did for the with the polar coordinate for the circular section, okay, and figure out how much is Y bar. Okay, so this is this is when you have one geometry adding on top of the other. Okay, and imagine there is a rectangle and you are taking out a circle out of it. Okay, so what happens in that case? The total area is again then A1 minus A2, and similarly over here in this summation you put a negative sign. Okay, so with that we would do. So is it clear up to this part what we said about composite geometries? কম্পোজিট জিওমেট্রি ব্যাপারটা বোঝা গেল?
হ্যাঁ স্যার।
Okay, মানে on paper it is very very easy to understand. The problem occurs when you try to solve them.
Sir, can you show one example on this?
Yeah, sure. So in this example, right here, okay, you essentially have that that circular section from the first problem. Okay, instead of 30-degree angles, these are 45-degree angles. So you can figure out what is the y bar for that circular section, but then you can also figure out how much is the y bar for this triangular section. Okay, and this is a composite geometry where that triangular section has been trimmed off this circular section right here. If you look at this geometry, this is actually a combination of many such geometries. Yeah, you can think of it a circle being taken out of a trapezoid, but I would like to think of it like a rectangle, a triangle, and then a circle being taken out of it. So here I would assume that it's actually a combination of three. So there is A1, A2, and A3, and the set A is A1 plus A2 minus A3. Okay, and even when we do those, so some of the things you might recall. So for example, if I'm trying to get the y bar of it, okay, for the rectangle, the y bar is, as you can see, 125. For the circle, it is again 125 because it's a circle. For the rectangle, the y bar is going to be, it is typically from the base, it is 1/3 up. So it is 250 by 3. Okay, then you can figure out what are the areas. So A1 is like how much? 400 times 250, like so A1 is 400 times 250, and that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 10 to the power 6 millimeters squared, right? So A2 is 150 times 250 divided by 2. So is it 18750 or something? I don't know. Millimeters squared. Okay, and A3 is pi times 60 squared. That much millimeters squared. So obviously you can figure out how much is y bar of the whole geometry, and in a similar way you can figure out x bar. For example, x1 bar is again 200, x3 bar is also 200, x2 bar again 1/3 away from the base, so 200 plus 200, 400 plus 50, so x2 bar is 400 plus 50, so 450. Okay, so you can use this to figure out the centroid of the whole geometry. Okay, and I'm sure you can do the same thing with this one right here. So of course the symmetry would tell you that the x bar is 0, y bar for the triangle it is 1/3 away. For the circular portion you will have to figure that out. Okay, for the triangle it is twice h by 3 or something. So you can solve this problem. I hope you can solve this one. Okay, so centroid is I believe mostly covered. So these are the examples that you can solve. If you want to take a screenshot, you can very well do that. Achha, just let me know in the next day's class that if you have the problem sheets for for friction and properties of surface. If not, then I'll share.
Sir, the problem sheet that is given in the classroom.
Yes. No, not the assignment one. The problem sheet.
Means the
Yes, sir,
drive.
problem sheet you
The
have
drive.
shared with us.
Yes, yes.
Yes, sir, we have that.
Okay. So practice problems from there. Practice problems from textbook. Okay. Practice, a lot of problems. Bottom line. So the last thing that we discussed
Sir,
today.
I have one doubt.
Yes.
Sir, for the examination purpose, when we are doing the area integral, just to calculate the area of the body,
Mhm.
then should I have to write the area integral? Like, can we calculate the total area from the geometry?
Of course, you can do that. Okay, but mm,
I
there are
want
two
to
reasons
ask, sir,
I
is it
did.
just necessary or not to show the area integral?
No, it's not for the calculating the area. It's not required. Okay, if it is like a trivial geometry, like a triangle, like a rectangle, like a circle, like a trapezoid, absolutely not necessary. Okay, complicated geometry, yes, of course, like this one with two curves intersecting. Okay, I don't know whether you can use some formula to get that expression or not. Okay, but
Sir,
for me, it's not.
in things like which is like this truncated part of a circle, this one can be calculated easily without integration. So if we do that, it won't be a problem, right?
Okay, okay, let me finish. Let me finish. You are again jumping steps, and that is not fine. How will you directly calculate for this truncated portion? You can only calculate directly by getting the this is A1, let's say, and this is A2. A1 is the entire circle, so the area
Yes,
state
yes,
is A1 minus A2. So
yes,
you
sir.
can get the A1. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say
Yes,
here.
sir. Yes, sir.
So pi by 4 times a squared, okay, because it's a 90-degree portion, and a2 is I don't know how much. This is h, and this is 45-degree angle. So this is h plus h, 2h, right? So this angle is 45 degrees. So this length and this length must be same. So half of 2h times h, which is basically h squared. Okay, and from that you can find out pi by 4 a squared minus h squared. Okay, I know you can mentally do this right away, but that's not okay. You are mentally doing this, right? Why are you mentally doing that? You can you are when you can get extra marks for writing them on paper. Just do that, because there is no way you can skip that step, at
No,
least in
sir.
your mind.
I meant this only. Like this, we
Yeah,
did
yeah.
without integration, so this is
Yes,
not a
but
problem, right?
show this step. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes,
In
sir.
area, of course, you can calculate. If there are ways, you can calculate very easily.
Okay,
Of
sir.
course, for this type of section, I don't know whether you can get it from a formula or not. I mean, where like you have y equal x squared and y equal. I'm taking another example, square root of x, where both of them intersect at 0 and 1. Okay, so this is 0 0 and this is 1 1. Okay, uh, I don't know whether you can directly get the area. Okay, but it's not okay over here. Here it is okay. That's the thing that you mentioned.
So there it
uh,
is not possible anyway.
okay, uh,
So that means if we have some complicated geometry with some given curve, then we will do the area integral, of course. But if we can do the area calculation mentally, then we have to show the steps just. Is that?
Achha, I can tell you one thing. Look at this area under the curve. It is integration x squared dA going from 0 to 1. It is 1/3, right? Same is this area right here. Okay, 1/3. So what lies over here, this area right here, that also is 1/3. And I can do that, you know, uh, not doing that integration that you are talking about. So if there is a way you can do that. You understand my method over here, right? If y
Yes,
equals
sir.
x
Yes, sir.
squared, okay, so you said it's not possible. It turns out it is possible. Okay, and it may be possible for other curves as well, but don't go to that extent. Okay, try to use double integration. Acha, we don't have enough time to cover Pepper's theorem, so we don't cover today. Okay, but we would need we somehow need additional half an hour that is supposed to be used for Pepper's theorems. Okay, I don't know how we can manage that in the next class, but somehow we'll have to do that, because then for dynamics we only have 2 weeks. Okay, and that's not even sufficient. So with that, we'll end today's class, and let's meet on Wednesday, and we'll start with Papa's theorems.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.